You guys remember when there were places to train with that 65 explorers in every room? Anyways, today we're going to go over the overview of each of the 3 Explorer Thief classes. My plan is to go over how the characters feel, any unique features and skills, and then we'll go over the skills that were removed, the skills that were added, and then I plan to show the skills that are primarily used in 4th or 5th job, depending on the level of the character that I have. From there, I'll give my candid thoughts on the class as well as something I'm going to call the fun factor. This is going to be a score from 1 to 10 on how much pure fun the class was to play while I trained it. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe for the algorithm and to let me know to keep making more. Let's do it. First up is the Shadower class. This class holds a special place in my heart for the nostalgia it brings when I think about the class. This was the first class I ever created in Maplestory all the way back around the 3rd anniversary. I never got it to the 4th job, but I always loved the class. The Shadower used to be an extremely close range character with 0 range whatsoever, but the last few updates have improved the usability and survivability of the class. It has even less health than a Night Lord, so if you thought he was a glass cannon, welcome to the Shadower. This class uses a dagger and a shield and will use the skill called Cruel Stab, which is actually the old boomerang step but renamed and with a new animation for its mobbing. From there, it also has a bossing skill called Assassinate for 1v1 target damage, and some buffs that help the damage for these skills, but those damage buffs are mostly critical damage buffs. Moving on to the skills, we'll start with which skills were removed first, and there were 2 skills that were actually removed, and that would be Meso Guard and Prime Critical. Prime Critical was the skill that actually increased your crit rate and crit damage at a set rate until it hit 100%, at which point it would reset back to 0. So if you already had a 100% critical rate, this skill was pretty much just sucking points away for no reason. I'm actually really glad this skill has been removed. That's a good quality of life increase right here for the Shadower. And the Meso Guard actually just used Mesos to block a portion of damage. So fun fact on this skill, when I first started this character, Shadowers were the only class that were able to train at enemies 30 levels higher than themselves because of Meso Guard and Meso Explosion. So the strategy used to be you would sit in Darksight, you'd drop some Mesos from your inventory, you'd move away, and then explode them from Darksight, since Meso Explosion used to do incredible amounts of damage and it ignored all defense. Unfortunately, the skill has been changed to the point now where it just doesn't do that anymore. So the new skills, and there's only one, is called Blood Money. So as you're attacking enemies, it drops coins branded with Assassin's Mark. This enhances your Meso Explosion, and so when you use your Meso Explosion, while this skill is active, it grants the Murderous Intent buff, which enhances your next Assassinate's final blow, and also gives you 20% critical damage. All that fancy talk is really just to say that this is the new version of Meso Explosion when you get to level 200, and is the Shadower version of a Seeker skill, since when you use the skill, it actually just flings the coins around the room and hits enemies. Now, unfortunately, this is not an automatic skill. You actually have to use the skill, so take that as you will. That could be a good or bad thing depending on how you see it. So the new animations look pretty good, and this class has a nice mix of summons that do damage over time with Dark Flare, has 1v1 skill with Assassinate, and really nice looking mobbing skill with Cruel Stab. This class also has 2 unique skills, and those are the Smokescreen and Steal abilities. Steal is now an on-off toggle instead of a skill on its own, so it's better but not extremely useful. Basically, it makes enemies drop potions that give you some health back. If you use it on a boss, it gives you a free 30 attack potion. However, since the health potions don't automatically restore health, you have to pick them up off the ground. They're not super useful, but if you're in a pinch, it could be helpful in the right situation. Smokescreen makes you invisible to enemies, and while you're standing in it, you're dark-sided and do 20% more critical damage. So on top of this, and all the other critical damage skills you get, that damage can really multiply fast. And then finally, this class does not have a bind skill, so once you get to level 200, you're going to need the Urda Nova node to be able to bind bosses. So my personal opinion on this class is that if you like melee classes with high risk, high reward type of playstyle, then this Thief might be for you. It does have flashy skills, but training doesn't feel quite as rewarding as something with bigger mobbing skills might. And it has a bunch of extraneous skills like Pickpocket and the new Blood Money skill that aren't particularly helpful. because it's trying to be a couple of different classes at once, like a hybrid melee ranged class, so it doesn't really work too well. It kind of disrupts the flow of training and attacking. Also, since you're very mobile and you'll be moving a lot, your playtime is going to be extremely active instead of passive. That could be good or bad depending on if you like that or not. Personally, for me, I thought for a fun factor, this is a 6.5 out of 10, and we're comparing this to a Pathfinder, which for me, that's my main. That was a 10 out of 10. So here's some extra gameplay footage if you want to watch it. If not, you can fast forward to the next section. Our second class today is going to be the Night Lord, which is a class that I always wanted to play when I was in Bera, but I couldn't since it required extreme funding. This was back when secondary stats were still a thing and a dexless, or having no dexterity stat, assassin was better than everyone else. That being said, not a whole lot has changed with the Night Lord, as it still requires funding to actually see the damages that are coveted in Maplestory. This class is still a glass cannon, but ranged, and there are some really significant quality of life changes that help make the class better. The Night Lord is unbelievably bursty, with most of its 1v1 damage coming from Quad Star, and its mobbing skill is now a revamped version of Showdown, which is actually now a third job skill, called Shuriken Challenge. More on that later. When it comes to training, most of the 5th job nodes will be for training, or specifically for boss burst damage. So we'll start off with the skills that were removed, and the first was the Shade Splitter. So this would spew out shadow clones that hurl throwing stars at enemies in front of you. This was the old mobbing skill and was the main attack skill up to your 5th job, and really the skill itself just wasn't designed very well, so I'm really glad that this skill is gone. The second skill that was removed was Shadow Web. So this would create a web of shadows around you that would tangle up to 6 monsters. Once tangled, the monsters would be unable to move and take continuous damage, and cannot be used against bosses. Shadow Web does not take damage even when attacking enemies with attack reflection. So this attack was always kind of useless since it couldn't be used against bosses. You know, if you like to use it for some of the extraneous things like helping you jump and that sort of thing, that's fine. But again, those are really not helpful anymore because of the skills that were added, which we can go into now, which is going to be one is called Shadow Surge. So this allows you to meld into shadow and surge quickly forward, which basically it allows you to move a short distance in whatever direction you're facing, which on its own doesn't sound awesome, but when you realize it can be used for dodging boss attacks, it becomes much more useful. The second skill that was added is called Shadow Leap. This harnesses the power of shadow to leap in the air. So every class got an up jump, and this is the Night Lord version of it. And then finally is the last new skill called Shuriken Challenge. This allows you to summon a large shadow-powered shuriken to annihilate enemies. Fun fact, before the patch, this attack is what Night Lords use as their main mobbing skill. So it used to be a 4th job skill, but now it's been moved to 3rd job to allow for better mobbing because of Shade Splitter being removed. This is an extremely positive quality of life change. The Night Lord will spend its time training primarily with the Showdown skill, with mixing in Shuriken, Dark Lord's Omen, and Throw Blasting every minute or two. This goes double for bosses as well. Training on the Night Lord to me feels better than the Shadower simply because it has more seeker projectiles than the Shadower that actually, seek automatically without you having to use the skill. But also it can make more of those seekers every minute or two, which really helps over time. It also has its own version of Dark Flare that you can put anywhere in the room, and that's really nice. Finally, my personal opinion is that combining everything we've talked about so far, the changes made to the Night Lord were extremely positive and overall makes the class much more fun to play in the 4th and 5th job. The class is still bursty as heck, and it requires funding to train and boss efficiently, but when funded and cubed, it can deal out insane amounts of damage in small periods of time. For me, since I prefer range classes and taking into account the extra seeker projectiles, this class was a bit more fun to me. I rate this on a funness scale of a 7 out of 10. Here's some extra gameplay footage. Our final class today is going to be the Dual Blader. So when I originally created this character, it was on a burning world pre-Destiny, and the class was completely unplayable to me. The skills had no flow, it didn't have an up jump, and its main attack weirdly moved you up a little, and it couldn't be used without moving in one of the cardinal directions either. It was just a complete mess. Fast forward to now, and they've really improved this class to the point that I enjoy leveling it thoroughly. This character feels like what the Shadower should have been originally. It has an attack that's used for movement, one for bosses and 1v1, and one for mobbing. It doesn't have a bunch of extraneous skills either that don't add value, and the mobbing skills hit around you in a rectangle instead of in one direction. Since this class is a melee class, you'll be actively participating in your training the whole time. So up until the 4th job, this class doesn't have a summon or secret projectile, and looking at some of the other websites, it doesn't look like it gets one up into the 5th job. But I can safely say that if you like the playstyle, you're going to love this class. Alright, so talking about the skills, we'll start with the skills that were removed again. So the one that was removed was Upper Stab. This would launch multiple enemies in the air, and you could deal additional damage by attacking those monsters in the air. This was actually the skill that I mentioned in the overview just a couple of seconds ago that I thought was useless and completely ruined the flow of the class. So once again, really good on Nexon recognizing that and improving the playability of the class. Some of the skills that were added were Bandit Slash Boost, which enhances Bandit Slash, the Slash Storm Boost, which enhances Slash Storm, and then there were 3 new hyper skills for the Blade Ascension skill. So Guard Break, Reinforce, and Extra Strike, which ignores defense, raises Blade Ascension's damage by 20%, and increases the number of attacks for Blade Ascension. Blade Ascension is the skill that you see in the background that actually moves me upwards. So playing through this class and training with it, I thought was an absolute joy. It doesn't try to be something it's not, and really allows you to just play as a melee class without having a summon or secret projectile until at least the 5th job. It really allows you to enjoy the characteristics of a melee class. And frankly, I really enjoyed that. This class doesn't have anything unique as it comes to buffs or anything like that. And that's totally fine because I felt like the attacks, because some of them inherently ignore defense, some of them inherently do more critical damage. Again, so it just the class itself feels nice, and the aesthetic is really nice as well. Finally, my personal opinion on the funness of this class is that the Dual Blade is easily my most favorite of all the Explorer Thieves. It focuses on one thing, and that one thing is being an extremely mobile melee machine. With its multiple mobbing skills, it's a very versatile class that can be used in pretty much any circumstance. The only con that I could find with this class, in my opinion, is that it doesn't really have anything to guard against one-hit KOs because of the lower health. But even then, that's really not a problem because of the mirror target skill, which makes enemies attack that, as well as a permanent passive that recovers 20% of your health every time you attack with it. It's only a 10% chance. But regardless, this class was really fun to play and train, and if I didn't already have a main already, I actually would consider playing this character as my own main. As far as a funness score, I gave this an 8 out of 10. So to answer the original question in the title of this video, I will not be switching mains. However, this could be a great chance for you to use the Burning World while it's open, or an extra character slot to play these new revamped Explorer Thieves. Like I said in my Bowman video, I hope that you get a chance to play with the classes and that they immediately click that the classes are meant for you, just like Pathfinder did for me. Thanks for watching. Will you guys main an Explorer Thief? Let me know in the comments below. Peace.